President Trump framed the midterms as a referendum on his presidency. The results could shape how both he and the Democratic Party position themselves for the 2020 presidential election. Susan Page is a Washington bureau chief for USA Today. She has covered every midterm election since 1982. Good morning to you, Susan Page.
Hey, good morning, Gayle.
So let's talk about last night. Was it a referendum on his presidency, number one? And does it set the stage, or how does it set the stage for 2020, starting with the president? Was it a referendum? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think this was a report card for Donald Trump, and he got kind of a split decision, right? I mean, if you look at Republican states, he really showed his control, his command of the Republican Party in a big way, helped some of those pickups for Republicans in the Senate. But if you look at those House races, and especially in suburban districts, you really saw a different kind of judgment on how President Trump is doing. So it doesn't just set the landscape for 2020. 2020 is underway. President Trump has been running for 2020 since the day he was inaugurated. And the rallies that we saw with this one were about helping Republican candidates on the ballot this year. They were also about helping him in 2 years.
And he has transformed the Republican Party. The chairwoman of the Republican Party was strongly defending his ad that many people, John Kasich, Jeff Flake, and others, said was a straight-up racist ad. So if in the challenge for a president is whether they get a primary challenge, it seems like last night and his complete sort of control over the Republican Party mean he's in very good shape in terms of any kind of primary challenge in his own party. He may get one, but he's got a real relationship with those primary voters.
You know, he may get a primary challenge. There are still Republicans who don't support President Trump, but he's not going to be deposed from the head of the Republican Party. This is his Republican Party. It is a different Republican Party than the one that existed before he ran for president. And you look at the people that you named who are critical of President Trump. There are people who were not on the ballot. There are people who decided not to run in the Trump Republican Party. And if you look at the handful of Republicans who were on the ballot who distanced themselves from President Trump, a congressman in Florida, a congressman in Texas, they lost last night.
Yeah. Did we get any more clarity last night as to who the Democratic opponent would be that the president would run against in 2020?
I don't think that I think that this is a wide open race, one of the most wide open races in modern times for the Democratic nomination. And one other heritage from President Trump is that he demonstrated you don't need the traditional credentials of a presidential candidate to win the nomination and even win the White House. So that is a message that we're hearing. So not only kind of the candidates you'd expect, like Joe Biden, for instance, and Bernie Sanders, who won last night, Elizabeth Warren, we're going to see, I think, a much bigger field that will include mayors and former cabinet members we see running for president. And even people who lost last night, like Beto O'Rourke in Texas, are being talked about as potential contenders for this nomination.
Susan, we talked all night about change in Congress, but there's going to be change in President Trump's cabinet in the coming week. How will that affect his presidency?
Yes, I think we're going to see a wholesale change on some White House staffers and in the cabinet in particular. Some of that is natural after 2 years. People get tired. But this has been a presidency that has unprecedented turnover in those top jobs. Some people have lost the president's confidence. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw changes in the attorney general. And some people are just ready to move on. Good news for the president that he got to bolster the Republican margin in the Senate. That will help him win confirmation for some of these new people.
And quickly, Susan, how do you see the president working with a Democrat-controlled Congress? Is he going to pick new fights, or are they going to have some kumbaya moments?
You know, I asked the president about that when I interviewed him about 2 weeks ago, and he's insisted that he could work with a Democratic-controlled House and with Nancy Pelosi to work on, of course, the default issue we always talk about is infrastructure. Maybe they'll make a deal there. But this is going to be a very contentious time because one thing we know is going to happen, investigations left and right as soon as Democrats take control of the House in January.
And the president also says one thing and does another frequently. Susan Page, thank you so much.